Hi, my name's Andy. I am the farm manager at Concord Food Co-op Organic Gardens here at Canterbury Shaker Village. I manage about a half an acre of vegetables, a greenhouse, and a high tunnel, and I consider myself extremely fortunate to be able to do this for a living. I love what I do. I get tremendous joy and pleasure out of taking care of plants, out of watching things grow, being in the sun, using my body, and I was wondering if other people might be able to benefit from some of the what I consider to be therapeutic effects of my job in today's current COVID-19 crisis, and it can also help you feel a bit more in control of your own food supply. So I wanted to introduce a short video series starting today talking about garden planning and seed selection. Right now is a perfect time to start planting a garden, whether it's in your backyard or if it's in containers on a porch or on your driveway, or if it's potted herbs or shoots or sprouts in your kitchen. If you're growing outdoors in a yard, you're going to want to consider a few things. Drainage is extremely important, so if you have a yard that really never dries out or stays flooded, it might not be the best site, or you might want to build up raised beds or something to get the soil higher and better drained. You also want to consider your soil type. Certain soil types are better for growing vegetables than others. Sandy loam is usually considered the most ideal soil type. If you have a yard that consists primarily of sandy fill or something highly sandy, it'll be a good idea to add compost to enrich the soil and improve a lot of the soil qualities to grow vegetables. If you have an opposite problem and you have heavy clay soil, there are certain things you can do to alleviate some of the problems associated with clay, such as building a raised bed or breaking up some of the compaction with tools or plants. Another important consideration for siting a garden is sunlight. Sunlight is huge. Vegetables love sunlight, and ideally they get sun from sun up till sundown, no shade at all. However, that's not really reality in most backyard gardens because you're bordered by trees or buildings and you'll get shade at least a portion of the day. That being said, you're going to want to select the absolute sunniest, least shady spot in your yard for your garden. The next thing you want to think about is water access. It's really important that plants get a consistent supply of water throughout the growing season, and you can't count on rainwater to meet that 100%. So you want to site your garden close enough where it's convenient for you to irrigate and water your garden throughout the entire growing season, whether that's using sprinklers or a hose with a spray nozzle or watering cans. You just want to make sure that it is easy enough for you to water so that you actually will do it. When space is a limiting factor, as it pretty much always is in any backyard garden, you're going to want to pick crops that make the best use of that space. So that's sometimes growing things vertically, as in tomatoes or cucumbers, which you can actually trellis upwards. And it's also avoiding certain crops which might be favorites of yours, but don't make the best use out of space, such as watermelons and cantaloupes and winter squash, things that vine around and take up a lot of space but don't yield heavily in that space. My last piece of advice when it comes to planning your garden is pick the things to grow that you love to eat and cook with. It is so fun to go through seed catalogs and pick a little bit of everything, but yeah, you're growing okra, but you hate okra. So pick the things that you really love and grow those. And I'm going to include a recommendation of some of my favorite things to grow that I find to be a combination of both easy to grow and also fun to cook with and eat. So my top picks would be lettuce, kale, broccoli, cucumbers, tomatoes, green beans, carrots, radishes, spinach, and I would probably throw snap peas on there as well. I also wanted to feature a couple resources I've found useful in my history of gardening and garden planning. One of them is How to Grow More Vegetables. This is by John Jevons, and this focuses on a biointensive method which is really geared towards getting the most out of a small space. This is a great resource. It has these big charts that include spacings and schedules for every crop you could imagine and be interested in growing. So I highly recommend this book. Another one is The New Organic Grower. This one is an old classic by Elliot Coleman. He's from Maine, and he has done a lot of research into Parisian, French market gardening techniques from the late 1800s, which again are focused on high production from a small area and super high quality vegetables. Again, this has crop by crop detailed information on how to grow vegetables, and it is very, very, very useful. Another great resource when it comes to garden planning is simply seed catalogs. They have a ton of information inside. These are a couple of my favorites. I like High Mowing Seeds. They're based out of Wolcott, Vermont. I also buy a lot from Johnny's Selected Seeds out of Albion, Maine. And there's also, not represented here, is Fedco Seeds. They're another company out of Maine. You can notice that all of those are northeastern seed companies, meaning that they sell regionally appropriate seeds. It's important to use a seed company that you know has seeds that are going to work well in your growing area, in your growing climate. So these are three that are really great. If you're looking for more heirloom selections, I would recommend Seed Savers Exchange or Baker Creek Seeds. Now I've opened up the High Mowing Seed Catalog, and you can see there's a bunch of information here available to you. There's the variety name, provider. This is a snap bush bean. It says 50 days next to it, so that means it takes 50 days from the day you seed it in the ground until you start picking beans. That's its days to maturity. It says here OP, that stands for open pollinated, and I'll talk about that in just a second. It also has some disease resistances here in red to mosaic virus and powdery mildew. It describes the size of the fruit and a description of the variety itself. And then also there is a photo over so you can see a picture of what it looks like when it's harvested. At the start of every crop section, you'll find a lot of information on each specific crop. So here we have beans, and it has cultural info, so that's talking about days to maturity. It's talking about what they need to grow well, temperature to germinate seeds, all kinds of great information in there. It also refers to some disease and pest issues that you might encounter. It has a resistance key, which elaborates on some of the abbreviations that you find in the varieties. And then it gives you seed specs. I look at this all the time. This tells you how many seeds on average per ounce. It gives you direct seeding rates that you would be using in the garden, and it allows you to figure out and calculate how many seeds you're going to need to order. There are a few important distinctions to make between different varieties of the same species even. So here we have OP, that stands for open pollinated. Essentially, those seeds will breed true and they will resemble the parent plants that you grew, and you can save seeds from these in your own garden. Next up is hybrid, and those are always followed by an F1 in the variety name, meaning that they're the first generation progeny from an intentional cross between two different distinct varieties that have different desirable traits, like disease resistance and flavor. So it allows for faster development of varieties in a given amount of time. And then the final distinction is heirloom, and heirloom are all open pollinated, but it is also saying that they are pre-World War II. So these are older varieties that have more historical significance and often have better flavor, but less storage quality and other traits. So hopefully you learned a thing or two about planning and starting a garden. I'm available via email. You can find my email at the Co-op website if you have any questions. We also sell high mowing seeds at the Concord Food Co-op. Next week, I'm going to be doing a video on starting seeds indoors, so that should be pretty fun, and I hope to see you there.
If you're in the mood for real food, it's Concord Food Co-op.